There's a certain comfort in being passed on the highway at night. It sounds strange, but any long-distance driver will understand it. When you've been on an empty road for too long, seeing another vehicle, even for a few seconds, reminds you that you're not completely alone out there. Most of the time, it's quick. Headlights appear behind you, grow brighter, then slide past, and within seconds they're gone again, swallowed by the darkness ahead. That's how it's supposed to work. That's what makes this different. I first noticed the headlights about an hour into the drive. It was a straight stretch of highway, no traffic in either direction, just me and the road. Then, in the side mirror, I saw them. Two small points of light, far behind me, steady and aligned. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Another driver, same route, same timing. It happens. But after a few minutes, something felt off. They weren't getting closer. I kept my speed consistent, waiting for the usual pattern. The slow approach, the moment where they fill your mirror, then the pass. But the distance between us didn't change. Not even slightly. They stayed exactly where they were, like they were fixed in place. I checked my speed. Normal. I slowed down a little. The headlights dimmed slightly, adjusting with the distance, but they didn't move forward. I sped up. They stayed exactly the same distance behind me. That's when I started paying attention. Because that's not how driving works. I watched them more carefully now, glancing between the road and the mirror. The lights were steady, not flickering, not shifting lanes, not drifting. Perfectly centered, perfectly still, like they weren't driving, like they were just there. Minutes passed, then more, and they didn't change. That quiet unease started creeping in, the kind you can't explain but can't ignore either. I told myself maybe they were using cruise control, matching my speed by coincidence. It wasn't impossible. Unlikely, but not impossible. Then I tested it. I slowed down significantly this time, dropping well below my usual speed. The headlights dimmed again. But they didn't get closer, they didn't pass, they didn't even drift. They just stayed there. At the exact same distance. That's when the thought hit me. They weren't matching my speed. They were matching me. I felt my grip tighten on the wheel as I stared at the mirror a little longer than I should have. Something about the way they held position felt intentional, controlled, like there was no driver behind them, or if there was, they weren't reacting the way a normal person would. I looked forward again, forcing myself to focus. Then I made a decision. I switched lanes, smoothly, deliberately. The kind of movement that would normally trigger a response from the car behind you. Either they slow down, adjust, or pass. The headlights didn't move. They stayed directly behind me, same position, same distance. Now in the same lane again, like the lane itself didn't matter, like they weren't following the road. They were following me. My chest felt tighter now, my breathing slightly uneven as I tried to process what I was seeing. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There always is. But the longer it continued, the harder it became to believe that. Then something changed. Not with the headlights, with the road. The lines ahead looked off, subtle at first, like they weren't aligning perfectly. I blinked, focusing harder. They snapped back to normal. I exhaled slowly. Then I checked the mirror again, and for a split second, the headlights were closer, much closer. Then they snapped back. Same distance as before. My stomach dropped, because that wasn't movement. That was something else, like a glitch. Or a correction. I kept driving, my eyes moving between the road and the mirror more frequently now. The presence behind me felt heavier, more real, even though it hadn't physically changed. Then I noticed something else. There were no details, no visible sear, no shape, just headlights, floating in the darkness, perfectly aligned at the exact height they should be. But with nothing attached to them. I stared longer this time, trying to make out any outline, any hint of a vehicle. There was nothing, just the lights. Watching, following. I looked forward quickly, my chest tightening as a new thought settled. If there was no car, then what was driving those lights? Or worse, what were they attached to? I didn't check again for a while. I couldn't. But the awareness stayed, like something was still there, just behind me, just out of reach. Then I heard it. A faint sound. Not from the road. Not from the engine. Something else. A low hum. I frowned slightly, listening more carefully. It was familiar. Too familiar. Because it matched the sound of my own engine. Exactly. Same pitch. Same rhythm. I felt a chill run through me. Slowly, I glanced at the mirror again. The headlights were still there, same distance, same position. But now, there was something else. A faint outline. Not clear, not solid, but enough to suggest shape, and it looked wrong. The proportions weren't right, too tall, too narrow, like something trying to resemble a vehicle. Without understanding how one should look. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening again. Because now it felt like it wasn't just following me. It was studying me. Learning. The realization settled in slowly, but once it didn't leave. It hadn't overtaken me because it couldn't. Not why it didn't know how. Another few minutes passed. Then I made a decision and I was going to stop. Not completely, just enough to force it to react. I slowed down gradually, watching the mirror carefully. The headlights dimmed, but didn't move forward, didn't pass, didn't react. They just stayed there. Waiting. That's when I understood something that made it worse. It wasn't trying to pass. Because passing requires knowing where to go, and whatever was behind me didn't know what was ahead. It only knew me. I pressed the accelerator suddenly. The truck surged forward, and for the first time, the headlights flickered, just once, then steadied again. But something had changed. They were slightly closer now. Closer than they had been before. The distance was shrinking slowly. Deliberately. I felt my chest tighten as I watched it happen. Because now it wasn't just following. Now it was closing in. I didn't stop. Accelerating. I kept going, pushing the truck faster than I should have. The road blurred slightly ahead. The engine strained. But the headlights kept getting closer, bit by bit. Then I saw something ahead. A rest area. Lights. Real lights. Not reflections. Not illusions. A place. I didn't hesitate. I took the exit immediately, turning off the highway and pulling into the lot faster than I normally would. The moment I did, the headlights disappeared. Gone. Completely. Like they had never been there. I parked and sat there for a moment, my hand still gripping the wheel, my breathing uneven. Then I checked the mirror. Nothing, just darkness. Empty road. I stayed there for a long time before stepping out, and when I finally did, I heard something from the highway. A low hum. Familiar, too familiar. I turned slowly toward the road, and for a split second, I saw them again, the headlights, far off in the distance. But this time, they weren't behind me. They were ahead, facing me, waiting. I got back in the truck immediately, and I didn't leave the rest area until sunrise. I still drive, but not the same routes, not at the same times, because every now and then, when I'm on a long empty stretch of highway, I see them again, far behind me, perfectly aligned, keeping distance, learning, and I know one night it's finally going to figure out how to overtake me. There's a rule I follow on the road that I never really had to think about until that night. You don't respond to things you can't place. Sounds, voices, movement. If you can't explain where it's coming from, you ignore it and keep driving. It's simple, and it keeps you grounded. Because once you start reacting to things that don't make sense, you lose control of the situation. I broke that rule. And I think that's why it didn't stop. It was a late run, somewhere deep into the kind of highway that doesn't show up clearly on maps, just long empty stretches with occasional signs and no real landmarks. I had been driving for hours without seeing another vehicle. No headlights, no taillights, nothing but darkness and the low hum of the engine. Everything felt normal, almost too normal, like the kind of silence that stretches a little longer than it should. That's when I heard my name. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. It was quiet. Close. Like someone sitting just behind me had leaned forward and said it softly. I froze instantly, my hands tightening on the steering wheel as my eyes locked forward. I didn't turn around. I didn't check the mirrors. I didn't react. Because there was no one in the truck. I knew that. I had checked before I left. The cab was empty. No one could have gotten in without me noticing. And even if they had, I would have seen them. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Long drives do that. Your brain fills silence with things that aren't there. You hear patterns where none exist. So I ignored it. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The road stayed the same. The engine stayed steady. The silence returned. Then it said my name again. This time, a little clearer, a little closer. I felt a chill run through me, but I kept my eyes forward, forcing myself not to react. That rule stayed in my head. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge it. As long as you don't engage, it stays nothing. That's what I believed. Then the voice changed. Can you hear me? It wasn't just my name anymore. It was a question. And something about that made it worse. Because it wasn't random. It was directed at me. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the wheel as I tried to steady my breathing. It sounded normal, completely normal. No distortion, no unnatural tone. Just a voice, calm, controlled, human. That's what made it dangerous. Because it sounded like something I should respond to. I didn't. I kept driving. The silence stretched again, longer this time, heavier. Then the voice came back, closer than before. I know you can hear me. My chest tightened slightly, because it was right that I could. You don't have to turn around, it continued softly. Just answer. I shook my head slightly, almost instinctively, even though I knew I shouldn't react at all. That's when I realized something. It wasn't just speaking, it was adjusting. Every sentence felt more natural than the last, more convincing, like it was learning how to talk to me specifically. You're doing the right thing, it said after a pause. Not turning around. I felt my stomach drop slightly, because it knew that it knew exactly what I was doing. You've been told not to respond, it continued. That's smart. My breathing became uneven, because that wasn't just a guess. That was accurate, too accurate. But I'm not like that, it said. I just need you to answer one thing. I clenched my jaw slightly, forcing myself to stay silent. Just one, it repeated. Then I'll stop. That's when the pressure started. Not physical, mental. The kind that builds slowly, like a weight you don't notice at first until it becomes impossible to ignore. The silence between its words felt longer now, like it was waiting, expecting, testing. I kept driving, but my focus wasn't fully on the road anymore. It was on the voice. You don't have to say much, it said again, softer now. Just yes or no. I felt my throat tighten, because that sounded easy, too easy. And that's how it worked. It wasn't asking for something big yet. It was asking for something small, something harmless, something that would break the silence. You're alone? It said quietly. I didn't react. Say yes if that's true. My grip tightened harder, because that wasn't a random question. That was a trap. If I answered, if I acknowledged it, then it wouldn't just be a voice anymore. It would be something I had interacted with, something real. I stayed silent. The voice didn't respond immediately this time. The pause stretched longer. Then, it sighed. A soft, almost disappointed sound. That's okay, it said. We can try something else. The words felt different now. Less patient, more certain. Then it spoke again. Are you sure you're alone? I felt a cold chill run through me, my eyes flicking briefly toward the mirror before snapping back to the road. I hadn't meant to look, but I almost did, and that was enough, because the voice reacted. Good, it said softly. You almost checked. My chest tightened. It wasn't just talking, it was watching. You don't need to turn around, it continued. I can come closer. I felt it then. Not a sound, not a movement, just a presence, subtle, right behind me. Close enough that it didn't feel like imagination anymore. You feel that? It asked quietly. I didn't answer, but my breathing gave me away because it changed and it noticed. There it is, it whispered. You know I'm here now. The words settled into the silence in a way that made everything feel heavier, more real. You've already responded, it said calmly, just not with words. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening further, because it was right. My reactions, my breathing, my hesitation, it was all communication. You don't need to speak, it continued. I just need permission. That word hit differently. Permission. For what? I almost said, but I stopped myself. Barely. Because that was the point. It wanted me to ask. It wanted engagement. I won't do anything without it, the voice said. That's the rule. The rule that I had won. Now it did too. And somehow, that made it worse. Because now it felt structured, deliberate, real. The silence stretched again. Then it asked the question, can I sit next to you? My entire body went still. The presence behind me felt closer now, more defined. Like it was already leaning forward, waiting. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because something in me understood. If I said yes, it wouldn't be behind me anymore. It would be beside me. And if it got that close, there wouldn't be distance left. Only space, shared space. You don't even have to say it out loud, it whispered. Just think it. I shut my eyes for a split second, then opened them again, forcing myself to stay focused, because that was worse if thinking counted. Then silence wasn't safe anymore. You're already considering it? It said softly, and it was right. That's what made it terrifying. Because the moment the thought formed, the moment I imagined saying yes, I felt something shift, slightly, from behind me. Closer. I inhaled sharply, my grip tightening to the point where it hurt. No, I said out loud. The word came out before I could stop it. The moment it did, everything changed. The presence vanished, completely. The silence returned, empty, like nothing had ever been there. I kept driving, my heart pounding, my mind trying to process what had just happened. Then the voice spoke one last time. Not behind me, not beside me, from the front, somewhere ahead. You already answered once, it said calmly. Next time, you won't say no. The line went silent again, and it stayed that way. I didn't stop driving until sunrise. I didn't check the back seat. I didn't look at the passenger side. I didn't speak. Not even to myself. But sometimes, when I'm alone, and everything is quiet, I hear it again. Not asking questions, not waiting, just closer. And the worst part is, it doesn't need permission anymore, because it already knows I can answer. There's a certain position every driver finds eventually. Takes time, but once you've been on the road long enough, you figure out exactly how your seat needs to be. The angle, the height, the distance from the wheel. It becomes muscle memory. You adjust it without thinking, and once it's right, you don't touch it again unless something feels off. That's why I noticed it immediately when it changed. It wasn't a big movement, just a slight shift backward. Barely enough to see, but enough to feel. At first, I thought I had done it myself without realizing. That happens sometimes. You stretch, shift your weight, bump the control slightly. So I adjusted it forward again, back to where it felt right, and kept driving. A few seconds later, it moved again. Back. Slowly. On its own. I froze, my hands tightening on the steering wheel as I felt the seat slide just a fraction of an inch away from it. Not fast, not sudden, controlled. Like someone was pressing the button carefully. I looked down at the controls. Nothing was touching them. I adjusted it forward again, more deliberately this time, making sure it locked into place. Then I took my hand off, waited. Nothing happened. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. Then it moved again, back. This time, I didn't touch it. I just let it happen. The seat slid slightly, then stopped. And for a moment, it felt like someone had just made space. Behind me, I swallowed hard, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. Loose wiring, I muttered under my breath. That was the only explanation that made sense. Electrical issue, faulty switch, something mechanical. It had to be. I forced myself to keep driving. But now I was aware of it. Every small movement, every shift in position, every inch of space behind me. A few minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then I felt it again. Not the seat this time. Something else. A slight pressure from behind. Like the backrest had resistance for just a second. Then it released. I sat completely still, my breathing slowing as I tried to understand what I had just felt. That wasn't mechanical. That felt intentional. Like something had leaned against it. Testing. I adjusted the seat forward again. This time, I pushed it farther than before, closer to the wheel than I normally would. It felt uncomfortable. But that wasn't the point. I wanted to see what would happen. A few seconds passed. Then, the seat moved again, back. But this time, it didn't stop where it had before. It kept going slowly, pushing me with it. Like something behind me needed more room, I grabbed the control immediately and pushed it forward. Again, harder this time. It resisted for just a second, then snapped forward into place. I froze, because that resistance shouldn't have been there. That meant something was pushing back. I didn't look behind me. I couldn't, because I already knew what it would feel like if I did. Empty. Or worse, not empty. I kept my eyes forward, my grip tight, my entire body tense. Then I heard it. A faint click from the seat controls. The same sound they make when you adjust them. Except, I wasn't touching them. Click. The seat shifted. Back. Click. Another inch. Click. Another. It wasn't random. It wasn't broken. It was being used. Slowly, deliberately, like someone was figuring out how it worked. I reached down and turned off the seat controls completely, cutting the power. The movement stopped. Immediately, silence filled the cab again. I exhaled slowly, my chest tight but steady. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because a few seconds later, the seat moved again, back, without power, without sound, just a smooth, slow shift. I felt my stomach drop, because that meant it wasn't the controls. It never was. I forced myself to stay still, not reacting, not moving, not looking, because now it didn't feel like a malfunction. It felt like something was adjusting me. Not the seat. Me, positioning, testing distance. Then the seat stopped moving. And for a moment, everything was still. Too still. Then I felt it, right behind me, close enough that I could feel the presence without touching it. Like someone sitting there, leaning slightly forward, breathing, not loud, not exaggerated, just enough to notice, matching my rhythm. Then slowly, it changed, becoming more controlled, more even, like it was correcting itself. Learning. I didn't move. I didn't react. Because I understood something in that moment that made everything worse. It wasn't just adjusting the seat. It was learning how to sit. The realization settled in slowly, heavy and cold. It didn't know how at first. That's why it needed space. That's why it kept moving me forward, so it could figure out where to be, how to fit. Then the seat shifted again, forward, slightly. Not enough to push me, just enough to adjust. Like it had found the position it wanted. I felt my chest tighten, because that meant it was done adjusting. The silence stretched. Then, something touched the back of my seat. Not hard, not sudden, just a light pressure, like a hand. Resting. I gripped the wheel tighter, my breathing shallow now, Every nerve in my body focused on that single point of contact. It stayed there, still, waiting. Then slowly, the pressure increased. Not pushing, just settling, like it was getting comfortable. That's when I understood. It wasn't behind me anymore. It was sitting there. Right there. I in the back seat. I didn't check. I didn't need to. Because I could feel it. Close enough that if I leaned back even slightly, I would touch it. I kept driving. I didn't stop. Not until I reached a place with lights, people, noise, anything that felt real. The moment I pulled into a crowded rest stop, the pressure disappeared completely. The seat felt normal again. The space behind me emptied. I sat there for a long time before turning around. And when I finally did, there was nothing there. Of course there wasn't. But the seat was still slightly farther back than I had set it. Not by much. Just enough, like it had been adjusted for someone else. I still drive. But I don't lean back anymore. I don't get comfortable. Because sometimes, when I've been on the road too long, I feel the seat shift. Just slightly. And I know it's not trying to move me anymore. It's reminding me there's still space behind me. And one day, it might need it again.